William, welcome to the lockdown session.
I love it.
It's so nice to start with a laugh.
I love the way you go for it so much, which is welcome to the lockdown sessions. I feel like I should have a pint in my hand or something.
Well, do you know what? I think I read a post on LinkedIn this morning that said, you can tell the value of your team culture by how much laughter there is. So I'm going to set up another exhilarating podcast on lockdown and welcome formally William Galton, learning and training consultant, executive coach, 20 plus years. You and I have worked together for a number of years on a number of different projects, some more successful than others. If we think about what happened just before Christmas, we won't mention any names. And I mean, first of all, just welcome. Thank you for.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. It's lovely to see you as always, man. It's lovely to catch up.
And really, the aim of these sessions is to take a moment and breathe and reflect on what have we observed and learned during these kind of 80 plus days that we've all been forced to suddenly work from home. You and I both work in the same world. We both run effective businesses. We've both been doing it for a number of years with established clients. And all of a sudden in March, we were both getting emails saying, hey, sorry about this, but we're cancelling training. So I ask the same question to everyone who comes on this podcast, William. So I'll fire it off to you and maybe we can just riff from there. Sure. Which is, what have you observed and learned as a result of being forced into this lockdown situation?
Okay, good question. Good starter question for 10 there, sir. Mm-hmm. Let's take the two questions separately. I think in terms of what I have observed is, for me, if I look at my own experience, it's classic kind of change curve moments in terms of what I've observed for myself and also what I've observed in others as well. So I think that in terms of what I've observed is, if you think about the whole toilet roll situation, being symbolic for kind of something I've observed, the mass panic, anxiety. And I'm pleased to report I didn't go out and buy like sort of 40 toilet rolls. But if I think about what that symbolizes for people, that's to do with panic, anxiety, worry, and uncertainty. So that's certainly one thing that I have observed. I also think off the back of that, then a little bit of people just kind of, certainly in the early stages, myself included, sort of withdrawing, wondering what it's going to be all about. How is it going to work? What does it mean to me? How am I going to pay for things like my mortgage or my rent or my whatever? So I think that happened. And then some changes which help people, I guess, kind of sort of going to go, well, okay, we just have to do some things differently now in terms of how we work. And then you had the Chancellor who stepped up and provided something in terms of furlough and some kind of package on that front, which I think people were pleased about and felt reassured about. So I think there's kind of like, oh my God, and then people kind of recalibrated their experience. That's kind of what happened for me. So then the second part of your question was to do with learning. Before I kind of get into that, though, I mean, what about you? What did you notice? Did you notice the same thing, different thing? Where are you at with it?
I was shocked. I was shocked when I went to a supermarket in the middle of March and I couldn't find anything to buy. For sure. And I'm equally shocked when I drive into a supermarket car park today and I drive straight out again because I can't be bothered to queue.
Yeah. I'm
not very good at queuing, so I've re-established that. But I think you're right, especially when you reference that change curve, because it's also, and people forget this sometimes, I think, but that change curve was grown out of the grief curve originally.
Yes.
You're right. And actually, when you talk about that challenge, that shock, that anxiety, that's grief. It's actually people grieving. And they were concerned and worried. And we saw one of the things that I really liked about the beginning bit was when I started to see this kind of community feel in my village where I live, where every post on the Facebook page, when people were connecting outside, before we went into lockdown, we were working together. There were some lovely things, you know, people writing to the village shop on the Facebook page saying, if you need me to do deliveries for people who can't come out, let me know. I put a post out saying if there were any mental health issues that arose during lockdown, ping me a message. I'd be more than happy to talk to people. I never get interaction and engagement on Facebook except from my mum, my sister, and my brother, right? And here was like 140 people commenting. And I think there was this really lovely community feel. And what I'm observing maybe now more is as people kind of turn away from the community aspect, and it's more about themselves again a little bit. People are more focusing in on me. So that first observation of it made me feel quite proud to be part of something quite human. I still feel as though now there's this, let's go back to normal. And I'm resisting that a little bit because I don't want to go back to how it was. The things I've learned and observed in the last few months tell me, actually, I quite like some of the behaviors I've adopted of late. And I don't want to just sort of snap back into how it used to be.
It's interesting, isn't it? Which is, I think there's that old thing about learning from history, isn't it? Which is learning from the past. And I've always wondered whether we are actually any good at that as a race, as a species. If we look at some of our kind of historical sort of situations. I like what you said though, which is I think that because it is classic change curve stuff, and I think there was that, and there was an initial kind of panic and anxiety and worry and people buying things, and you saying about the thing, I remember seeing lots of Facebook posts and LinkedIn posts of people photographing empty shelves of pasta, dry pasta, blue paper, a whole bunch of stuff where you really kind of go, come on folks. But then, as you said, I think that I think there's definitely a community part. I mean, Debbie set up a network on her Facebook page where she was the admin to help people if they needed shopping or if they're in a vulnerable situation. Beautiful. And I love that stuff as well. I mean, I think that part I kind of wholeheartedly applaud. But now we're in an interesting point, which is what you're saying, which is kind of going, okay, well, things are going back to normal, whatever that kind of looks like. So what do we, what good can we keep of this whilst at the same time kind of going, okay, well, if we do go back, how do we play it whereby it's different now? How do we take the learning forward, shall we say?
And this is to your point, right? Are people, and it's a question to people who are even listening to this, right? Are people asking those questions to develop, a deep level of self-awareness about what they want or what they think they want? I must get back to work. I must get back to work. But are people safe? In our world of training and coaching, for me, this recovery phase is all about the psychological safety. I was running a workshop this morning and for team leaders. So these are newly promoted team leaders, not quite managers yet, but they've got responsibility for work distribution and one-to-ones. And one of the guys works in a warehouse. He's a warehouse distributor team lead. Well, he's not had a day off since this kicked off.
Yeah.
He's been working in a warehouse with mainly European and Asian guys, and they've been struggling to socially distance. They're all stressed. He was craving the development session. It was just 2 hours. But he was saying that a lot of his guys are coming to him. They don't actually want to come to work. One, because they've got to go on public transport.
Yeah.
And two, they have to work in a really oppressive environment with a mask and gloves. And it's really hard to pack things when you're wearing rubber gloves. My question to you comes from an observation of mine, which is, I wonder whether the people we work with, our clients, whether that psychological safety is really beeping on their radar. Are people really caring still for that group of, does everyone want to just go back?
Mm.
I'm not
It's
sure.
interesting, isn't it? Which is, I think that, look, I mean, I have missed sometimes being in rooms with people. I have missed that connection. So there's that side to consider. I am also aware that being in a room with people right now does represent a risk. So
Right.
I'm also kind of aware of that. So I guess that if I think about the psychological safety, I mean, look, some people haven't got the luxury of thinking, do I really need to go into an office? I mean, if you think about the team leader as a case in point, and I mean, I do a fair bit of work, or have done in the past, with people who work in warehousing and manage shifts and distribution. And if I think about that whole world, you kind of have to go there to pack the stuff so that the
Right.
stuff can go out.
Correct.
But that's different to having a one-to-one with a team member, which you can do perfectly effectively with video on, because the video technology now is superb, and it feels very natural and it feels very human, and you can see each other and connect with each other to a very high degree and quality. So I think in terms of a psychological safety, I think that the question, a question which I would love to see more people asking of themselves, leaders asking of their people, which is, do we really need to physically be in the office for this? Are there other options? What are the other options? How could we make it work and not have to go into the office? I think it'd be great to ask those questions.
And when I hear you say that, I instantly think those are the kind of questions that leadership teams should be sitting around the table, not as a group of leaders, but leaders with their teams should be sitting around tables.
Yes.
And having those kinds of conversations, because they're great questions, because we've proven in the last few months that most organizations can operate virtually.
Yes, we have.
And we know that some organizations are already sending out messages to their people saying, listen, if you want to work from home, guys, work from home.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, because I think that some people are also sending out messages which are different to that as well. So I don't know what's driving that. I don't know whether that's fear, trust, or what that might be. But some people are keen to get people back in, albeit with social distancing measures in place. I mean, I know some organisations are setting it up really well, whereby they kind of go, okay, here are the rules, this is how we make it work, etc. But I just think asking questions to kind of go, do you really need to have that thing happen in a building? Are there some other options that you could explore and experiment with? Because also, let's be honest, we've got enough evidence now to suggest, given, as you said, it's 80, 90, whatever days, people have still conducted business. They have still done things. So, that tells you that it's possible.
Our 200 listeners from commercial property have just left subscribing to our podcast off the back of that comment.
yes, but
we
it's
don't
funny.
Need an office.
Exactly, and so exactly. I mean, look, let's not go that far, but I do think it's interesting. I mean, also, and if you think about property, I mean, if you look at the papers at the moment, you'd have to be deluded as a property person not to be kind of going, people are going to be thinking about how they use their office space.
Right,
but hey, that could be an opportunity as well, because suddenly you go from being, okay, well, we run the building to we provide them with a safe building. So, you could look at it as an opportunity just as much as something else.
Well, and I think part of that is about, we talk about learning and observations. I went to the pet store the other day to, fill up on cat litter and some dog treats. And they've got spaces marked out, from front to back, 2 meters apart. Please stand here until, there's space. Someone came and stood right behind me, and I pointed to the space. I said, excuse me, would you mind just stepping back onto the cross? And they looked at me like I was like mad. And I think this is something as well where I'm assertive by nature. I'm going to speak up.
Yeah.
I think that people need to get comfortable, because we're all at these different levels of safety.
Agreed.
If you're not comfortable going back into an office, or someone's approaching you in a shop, you've got to be able to say, actually, no,
Yeah.
And we've all got to acknowledge and respect that actually
Yeah.
we're all at different stages. So I don't know. I want to almost link that back into the opening question, which is, as a coach, when you're working with people and you think about some of the coachees you're working with, what have you observed them struggling with during this period? Because they would have also been shoved in to virtual situations. They'll be working in sales, in management. What have you seen from a coach's point of view that people have been going through?
I think two things have come through quite strongly, which is connection and engagement with team. And also the question which I have there is, I don't know if that's because they're just used to how they used to do it, and this is different to how they are doing it or did it before. So I don't know whether that's true or not. So connection and engagement with team and building that. And also weirdly, because you'd think people would have more time, but a lot of people experience less time. In this new way of working, they're still experiencing time poverty. Now, I think some of that is because you have to learn new ways of working. I think some of that is because of just making sure that you have your priorities in the right place, happening at the right time, and you're planning well and prepared well, and you've got a good sort of routine and habit to work with. But I'd say that those two things come through really strongly, and also just managing uncertainty, both individually and also within your team, managing the unknown, managing the what will happen to retail, for example, what will happen to our shop, what will, there's those kind of things. So I'd say actually not two, probably three things come through.
Yeah, and when you say that, that really lands with me, because I was talking to a leader the other day, and he said that he wants to try and get his team there in sales. He wants his team to start going out again and seeing customers. So their pipeline was good enough to see them through these 3 months, but their business development is now, almost zero. There's no pipeline for them. And he wants them to go out, but he recognizes that until he's prepared to get on a plane and start traveling around the region, he can't be asking them. And his wife is adamant. He's based out in Italy. His wife is adamant that he's not traveling yet. She doesn't want him going on a plane.
Yeah.
And he's northern Italy, so they were hit terribly hard.
Yes, they were.
And he says to me, how am I meant to lead by example when I can't do it myself? And
it's a great question. I mean, at least he's asking himself that question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to it for sure. Yeah, what a powerful question.
Yeah.
And I wonder, when we think about the leaders we're working with, or even maybe just you and I as coaches, right? How can we lead by example during a time that's so uncertain, that's so complex, that's so ambiguous? It's quite hard. We need to be able, I think, somehow to look at ourselves and know what we're trying to do for ourselves before we worry about what others are doing. But I think managers and leaders have got some tough questions to pose.
Massively, and I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider if you think about the sort of the whole thing of responding in tough situations, which is essentially what resilience is about. One of the kind of key factors which kind of helps you do that, I think, in addition to kind of managing your emotion, self-regulation, etc., is understanding your why and your purpose. And even if it's just your purpose for now, as opposed to your meta purpose, I think just kind of understanding that is quite a nourishing thing to do. As far as nurturing it. So that's something which I've been, I've had the chance to explore for myself, kind of going, the truth is, I don't know how to use the technology yet, to kind of adopting more of a growth mindset around that. I will learn how to use the technology, and I will learn as I go. And I want to build still engaging, meaningful dialogue and conversations with both people I'm coaching and also training sessions that I'm running.
And maybe, William, what it's really about is highlighted not in the training that we do, but in the fact that we recognize that it's about relationships right now.
Yes. And also it's about willingness, I think. It's about relationship. And also I think it's about willingness, because it's a bit like, look, I can't expect somebody or encourage somebody to connect with their team virtually if I'm not prepared to connect and engage virtually. So, there would have been a time when if you'd asked me like 4 months ago, you'll be doing some Microsoft Teams sessions on various management skills and practices and leadership skills and practices, you'd be running some sessions on this. If you'd asked me that 4 months ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
Now we're looking for sponsorship from Microsoft. We'll keep plugging MS Teams.
Exactly. It's sort of hopefully the commercial property folk will forgive us, and Bill will kind of like wade in here and help us out. So step up to the plate. But what I find interesting about that, which is I do think, and to quote you in terms of the person you cited, you were coaching in Northern Italy, I think I have to bear in mind people copy more than they obey. If you look at kids, people tend to copy you. A kid will copy you more than they obey you. You've seen those pictures on those programs on Super Nanny when the kid's swearing, and it's terrible, and kids shouldn't swear, and then you see one of the parents swearing, you kind of go, well, that's right there. What's
there
happening?
It is.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the question which that senior leader in Northern Italy is asking is a great question to pose, which is how can you role model positivity, certainty, engagement in uncertain times? How do you get behind this? Okay, this is my first, I remember my first Microsoft Teams session. It wasn't great. It felt extremely clunky. But it's interesting when you try something new, because then you've got a choice. I think if I think about myself, and also just talking to leaders or people out there generally who are listening to this, which is, when you try something out for the first time and it's not as smooth or as slick as you'd like it to be, and it feels a bit clunky and awkward, at that point you got a choice, which is you kind of go, I'm never doing that again. Or you kind of go, okay, what do I learn from it? How do I make it better for next time?
Yeah. Yeah, and part of that, William, and I think it's great to think about what did I learn and what will I do to make it better, because that's the natural coach in you. I'm not sure people naturally think those questions. I actually think that could be a really cool technique to offer to people, to say, listen, in every situation that you pass through, ask yourself the question, what did I learn from that experience, and what do I want to do to make it even better next time? Because if you look at the sort of the macro of what lockdown looks like, if we're all put back into regional lockdowns later because there's other spikes, are people going to be sat at home going, well, what did I learn last time? Yes. What can I do to make this one better? Or are they just going to be really frustrated, really angry, and copy, not obey?
Yeah, exactly. And say things like, I don't want to do that thing like we did last time. I hated it. What do you do there? Do you remember the muscle and utilize that muscle just like you're describing? I think it is a good question to ask. And I really hope that, for me, I think that some of these lessons, just because, it's interesting because it also links to the whole growth mindset piece, which is, I think Mandela puts it very well. I think it's from Nelson Mandela when he put, I don't lose, I either win or I learn. Mm-hmm. And I think moving beyond that paradigm, sort of in these different times that we're working in, living in, moving beyond that paradigm of, did it work, didn't it work, to did it work, what did I learn? Didn't it work? What did I learn? I think is a much more useful way of looking at it, and much more orientated towards a growth mindset, which I think is a really key enabler, and has been a key lever just to kind of go operate from that, instead of, you've done this for 20 plus years, you've done it in rooms, you're not doing it in rooms. What are you going to do, mate?
Well, and you're highlighting the difference between people who walk around with that fixed mindset. And from our business point of view, if we had a fixed mindset, we'd have been very quiet for the last
yes.
2 months. And I hear what you're saying about, suddenly realizing, wow, okay, they want to do it on MS Teams. I had a client a few weeks ago, new client. We agreed to do a lovely little workshop, 2 4-hour sessions with the leadership team. We were going to explore the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So that was going to be fun. I was going to send them out an assessment. We're going to look at the data. And then we'd look at how do we build trust in the second part of the session. So I've set up the Zoom link with the meeting password, send it off, because I've been using Zoom for a while since it came out, and I'm savvy enough with it to know how to break out and use polls. I get an email from their CTO, their Chief Tech Officer. We don't like Zoom. We're encouraging people to use MS Teams. Are you okay with that? New client, I've got to say yes. And I said, yeah, no problem. Would it be possible, Yuri, to have a couple of draft sessions where we get to kind of play? Anyway, bless him. He set me up with an account on their platform, and he came and he joined me with 3 of his tech team, 2 days running for 2 hours, so I could learn the platform.
Wow, fantastic.
You know, so that when we went into the room, I wasn't thinking, right, how do I do? So at least, although it was clunky, and this is this idea of this, you know, I love what you talk about when you say it's about fixing yourself in the growth mindset. Because if we get stuck, and I do feel that a lot of people feel stuck. I chatted with a career coach the other day, and she was saying that a lot of people in this moment have realized that they hate their jobs. Actually, they don't even want to go back to them.
Yeah.
Like, they're on furlough. They're hoping they'll get sacked so that they can get some kind of redundancy. And then they're going to look at what they could do next. And I said to her, how many people are you coaching right now from a career coaching perspective? That's her job, right? Her business. And she said she has over 18 new clients that have come on board this side of lockdown that have realized during this period they hate what they do. They're good at it, but they have no passion for it. And they want more. So if you
maybe
have
that's
a
one of the
fixed
good
mindset,
things good things that's come of this.
Right. Although if everybody leaves their job to follow their passion, I don't know what happens.
There is that as well. I don't think that will happen, but I do think what's interesting in terms of what that represents for me, if I think about it, is I think it's a chance. I think it's given people the chance, and it's kind of, I guess, forced people to, because you're not going anywhere, to reflect.
Yeah.
To do some actual deep reflection, which, let's be honest, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I have varying degrees of success in terms of being able to be still and reflect for amounts of time. I do think one of the good things that's come about of this, and don't get me wrong, there are many bad things as well, but one of the good things that's come about of this is that people have had a chance to really kind of ask that question, well, what's it all about for me? Where am I in my life? How satisfied am I with my lot? If I had an ideal, what would that look like?
And I think these are really powerful questions. In fact, as I start to kind of almost draw together some of the themes in our conversation today, it's about, and maybe this is both observation and learning, that really what this is about is a chance to reflect, to be still, because we are enforced to stay at home. You know, the guidance is still 80 days in. If you can work from home, work from home.
Yep.
I had a client the other day send me a message on LinkedIn saying that, you know, they were forcing everybody back into work on the Monday. And, you know, I mentioned it to a couple of people in my family on a Zoom call that afternoon. And they were like, I'd resign if I was forced back into the office. My friend in Ibiza who helps run a restaurant there, been treated very poorly during this period. He doesn't want to stay with them. So I think the way businesses have operated,
that's interesting,
you know, have given us the chance to kind of reflect and look. And I think maybe if I pick up some of the themes of what you're saying, it's almost as if let's not waste the opportunity we've got to ask some reflective questions, to be still, to base ourselves in a growth mindset, and to start asking questions of ourselves, not to necessarily change, but to qualify and clarify what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and where we want to do it. And maybe that's a really, little 5 whys, a really nice way of exploring a little bit of self-development during this time. I don't know, am I reading right, or have I just interpreted my own landscape?
No, I think you're reading it. I think you're reading it right. Those are certainly some of the main themes for me. And I think that those are some of the main things for the people whom I can with and talking with. It's an interesting. And also, I really like what you said as well, which is hopefully we learn from some of the good things that we've seen come about, and we take those things forward. I don't know how optimistic I feel about that. I'd like to believe that we can, though, globally, and looking more international. I think that there is capacity to do that.
My hope is that because we've all been through a version of lockdown globally, it's the first time in history humanity on a global scale can empathize with each other. And I know it looks different because, I remember speaking to people in India when this kicked off, and they were laughing with me, saying, they talk about social distancing. Have you tried living with 14 people in a house with no running water? How are you meant to wash your hands and socially distance? And he was laughing when he said it, but actually there's a sad truth also.
Yes.
But there's this opportunity for global empathy. We've all been through this. Maybe it can somehow wake our consciousness to be a little bit more reflective, to be a little bit more focused on ourselves, so that maybe, and from a coach's point of view, we find that people start to really tap in, not just to their talents, but also to their passions, because that would make me very happy if everyone I was working with could touch those passions and their talents.
Yeah.
And it almost feels as though we've gone full circle from, like, in our conversation, we started out with kind of your observation of people going through that kind of change curve when this all kicked off, to actually coming to a point where they've realized they're on the way up through the curve now. And actually it's a chance for us to reflect on ourselves. I wonder, William, if maybe we could get you back in say 6 to 8 weeks time, when we're further down the line in our recovery phase, and do another episode and see what we've maybe observed as people start taking some tentative steps back into the workplace.
I'd love to. Hopefully by that point as well, I'll have had a haircut.
Well, yes, sure. Well, I might keep my beard.
I like my beard. My beard's fine. It's just my hair. I position this camera very strategically, so it's just literally the top of my forehead.
It's observed well, and fortunately, we'll put this out as an audio podcast mainly, so it won't be lost.
I'm very happy about that, Brad.
It won't be lost on anyone. William Galton, thank you very much for your time today.
Real pleasure.
Love it.
Been lovely to catch up with you, and I'll see you soon.
Indeedy. See you soon.
All right. Take care. Cheers, Brad.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.